Welcome, you beautiful bookish people. I'm excited for today because we get to go over every single book that I read in December and January. Listen, December was quite the crazy month and I did not have the amount of time that I needed to be able to sit down and talk about all the books, but also I didn't read much in December, so I felt like it would have been fitting to put December and January together so we could just talk about a bunch of books all at once. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Now in December, I picked up 5 books. One of them ended up being a DNF, so I really only read about 4.5, almost 5, because I started another book that I ended up finishing in January, and I was most of the way done with it. But anyways, in January, I read 10 books, which is so crazy for me to say because I usually read about 6 to 8, so having 10 books in there is kind of crazy. But I'm really proud of myself, so let's get into it. The first book we have is On Wings of Blood by Briar Bolin. Now, we're not starting December off very strong because this is the book that I DNF'd. And I think part of the problem is there's so many books on Book Talk that are like super hyped. Everybody says they're incredible, amazing. And I go into them with like really, really high expectations. And then I'm usually disappointed. And I feel like that's what this was. It's not a bad story. It wasn't like terrible writing, terrible characters, like none of that. Like you could tell she's a good writer. I just wasn't interested. And I really didn't like the female main character. I usually like the female main character. There's probably been 1 or 2 that I've been like, I don't like you. Like I can't really relate to you. I really don't understand what you're about. And this was one of those characters. And I'm really disappointed to be able to say that because I want to be the girl that's like, yes, strong female lead. This is fantastic. And like, yeah, I love seeing a strong female lead, but she was just kind of pissing me off. I got 65% of the way through. So this wasn't like first 20 pages, I was done in DNF. Like I gave this a fair chance. Like if I go over 50%, I feel like that's a fair chance. Granted, there have been a couple books that I have DNF'd before getting to the halfway mark, which we'll get to that in a minute. But anyways, basically what this story is about is a girl named, crap, what is her name? Medra Pendragon. Anyways, she is from a certain world. Then something happens in her world to transport her to a different one. And this different land is where this book is set. It is ruled by vampires. And this series is called Bloodwing Academy. And there is an academy that's called Bloodwing Academy that all of these like prestigious people and families send their kids to, and she is dropped in this world, taken to the vampire authorities, told, hey, you're kind of strange, where did you come from? And she's like, I'm not telling you anything. But they notice that she is not a vampire, obviously, and they're like, you know what? We're actually gonna send you to the academy and you have to attend, take classes, do your thing because we think you're a dragon rider. But plot twist, dragons are extinct. So I was just like, what's the point? I'm assuming at some point in the series, they come up with like an, oh my God, they're not extinct, hurrah. But it was like, if I was dropped in a random planet, like if I was taken from Earth and dropped onto Mars against my will, and somebody there was sitting there telling me, oh, this is how our government is run, you're going to kind of be our prisoner, but like, we're just gonna give you no choice but to go to this school and learn and try to become the dragon rider. I'd be like, who do you think you are? Like, do you see any dragons? No, I would be trying to get back to Earth. I don't know if it was just like a difference of opinion or like I would have acted very differently in the situation, but I feel like logically, most people would be trying to get to their homeland. And I understand that there was something crazy that happened in her homeland that, I mean, sure, maybe she didn't want to go back, but she talks about it all the time. You could tell she misses it. And I'm like, girl, what? Anyways, we're gonna move on. That was not a great start. Now we get to talk about my top read of 2025, which is the Book of Azrael by Amber V. Nicole. I'm going to talk about these 3 all together because I read them in December, but I'm not going to go through every single book because that's going to be a spoiler. But anyways, this one was obviously 5 stars. Every single book in the series is 5 stars. I think these characters are like none other I've ever read. This is true enemies to lovers, and I'm talking, like they try to kill each other multiple times. One tortures the other for information, but they kind of have to be reluctant allies in the situation, and they end up falling in love. And it's fantastic because it's like, I would tear the world apart for you. Both of them are morally gray. This FMC is morally gray, and when I can't overstate that. She is absolutely morally gray, and it shows throughout this whole series, and it's so entertaining. Anyways, this book is about Diana Martinez, and she is kind of a slave to this guy named Caden, and she is what's called an Igmaruthan, which is a basically like sort of a vampire creature. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but she was long ago turned into an Igmaruthan to save her sister, and she serves Caden to keep her sister safe because he's like, you're gonna do this for me or else I'm gonna take out your sister. And so she's been centuries. She's old. Listen, there's a lot of times where fantasy books are like, she's 19 or 20 years old and he's 752. No, she's old too. So anyways, she is serving Caden, and he tells her, hey, I need you to go find the Book of Azrael, which can basically give me the step-by-step instructions on how to do a certain magical, I guess you could call it a ritual. I don't know, some sketchy stuff. And so she goes out to try to find this book, but she runs into these celestials and gets involved with the, like, basically their enemies, and runs into a certain man who shall not be named. And they basically come to an agreement of like, hey, I hate you, but we need to work together to find this book before Caden does, because we don't want it to fall into the wrong hands, because she's starting to have these like, I'm sick and tired and fed up with my life and I want to do something about it sort of thing. And the rest is history. Oh my god, I cannot get enough of these characters. Like I said, they're top tier. The lore is crazy. Like, this is a very, I want to say it's a unique world. There are like familiar fantasy elements, but it goes so much deeper than you think. And I devoured these books. It's definitely on the dark side. I would say this is like a dark fantasy, and it's a dark modern fantasy too. It's not necessarily urban, but I will recommend these at every single chance I get because they're just, I'm stumbling over my words. If you have stuck around for a little while, you know that when I really, really love a book, it's hard for me to talk about it because there's just so many emotions that I'm trying to figure out how to convey and tell you that like this is just top tier without repeating myself a million times. And that is definitely the series for me. Now, the last book that I read in December was The Wind Weaver by Julie Johnson, and this was actually a reread because I received an ARC for the second book called The Sea Spinner, and I wanted to kind of refresh my memory because I read this back in April of 2025, and I did the audiobook for this one the second time around. I feel like, for whatever reason, when I'm doing my rereads, I think audiobooks are better because they require a little bit less concentration than actually like reading the words on the page, and since I already knew the story and had read it from the actual book the first time, I felt like it was totally fine for me to do the audiobook because I'm not gonna lie to you, a little side tangent, every time that I have listened to an audiobook as the first time experiencing a story, I've not rated them as highly, and I think part of the reason is my mind gets a little distracted when I just have audio because I'm a very like visual person and I need to have all of my senses focused on something for me to actually like absorb the information. And I like to put an audiobook on while I'm cleaning or doing other stuff or driving or something like that, but like I inevitably miss some details. But I felt like in a reread is totally fine because I'm like, I've already know the story, I just need a little bit of a refresher. But anyways, this story is about Rhea Fleetwood, and she is a half fae, half human, living in a land where halflings are kind of hated and will get you sent to the gallows upon discovery. And so literally the opening scene of this book is her about to be hung, and she is rescued by this mysterious Commander Scythe, and he's like, you know what, you're gonna come to my land where the fae are loved and it's a great time. time, but I'm taking you there because you got a strange birthmark on your chest, which tells me you are one of 4 remnants in the universe, fated to restore the balance of magic. So this is an elemental magic system, and she is the Wind Weaver. She is the Wind Remnant. And there's a lot of journeying in this story. The majority of this book, I don't want to say the majority, a lot of this book is them going to Commander Scythe's country, and she kind of like learns a little bit of information at a time throughout this journey, and she meets the people that Scythe knows, and she's like, oh, so I'm not just this unassuming halfling destined to be in hiding all my life. My actual purpose is to save the world. And I really enjoy stories where you kind of learn the information along with the main character. Like if the character is living in a world where they're unaware of the stakes, I guess you could say, and have not grown up knowing truly what's going on in the world. And I feel like it's a really good setup for absorbing the world building in a way that sticks, because if you're finding out the information as she is, you can slowly build it up instead of have like an info dumpy kind of first couple chapters where you're just given a bunch of information, if that makes any sense at all. And the second book, oh my god, even better than this one. And the ending of that, oh, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. Actually, you know what? That's the second book that I read in December. So I'm just gonna pull this one. This is the Sea Spinner. And I had such a great time. This includes a love triangle, and it's kind of established a little bit in the first book, but it's really explored more in this one. And when I say this is slow burn, this is slow burn. Like, they don't really get together until probably that much through. Like, it's a while. I think if you love elemental magic, a strong FMC, you love like training tropes, and there's a good bit of politics in this as well. I think this could definitely be for you. Also, this is my Fairy Loot edition. I don't have the regular cover for the Wind Weaver. I should probably get it so it matches my series, but anyways. The first book that I read in January / finished in January was The Wrath of the Fallen by Amber V. Nicole, which is the 4th book in the Gods and Monsters series, starting with the Book of Azrael. This one's gonna be super brief because, like I said, I'm not gonna go too into detail with this one, but oh my god, this went in a direction that was just delicious. I have been waiting for a certain character's arc to happen, and I wouldn't say it completed in this book, but it started on the trajectory, and I don't want to say this character is my favorite because they're not, but these characters are so complicated and messy, and I think that just makes for the most delicious plot. And don't even get me started on how this book ended. I am unwell. I knew it was gonna be crazy going into it because it's Amber V. Nicole, for crying out loud. Every single one of her books ends on a crazy cliffhanger. But this was like another level. So I will be impatiently waiting for the 5th book. Also, I found out that it's gonna be a 7-book series. So we still have 3 books to go. And she said that the 5th, she could be just kidding around, but she said the 5th book is not like super devastating. So I feel like that'll be a good break. But then she said the 7th one is the most devastating. And if that tells me anything, it tells me that we have not seen anything yet. Because if none of these books were quote unquote the most devastating, then what's about to happen? Anyways. Now, the second book that I read was The Sea Spinner, so we're going to move on from that one because I already talked about it. And the third book that I read was The Syndicater by Runix, which is the 6th and final book in the Dark First series, which is a dark mafia romance. And I have been spacing these out. I don't even remember when I read The Predator, which is the first book, but I read it as sort of like a palate cleanser to get out of the fantasy genre, because if you read so much fantasy, it all starts to kind of blend together. And I needed a break, but I didn't want to just binge the whole series because I love this. Oh my god, this series was so good. I believe, okay, I keep forgetting to give you my ratings. The Wind Weaver I rated 4 stars. The Sea Spinner, I think I rated 4.25. The Syndicator, I rated it 4 stars. Wrath of the Fallen was 5 stars, obviously. So the Syndicator, like, it wasn't my favorite thing in the world, but I really just don't think that dark romance is gonna give me that 5-star feeling, just because it's not as thorough of a world building, I guess guess you could say, just because the majority of them are set basically in our world, or the equivalent of our world. And I think it was wrapped up so beautifully. I think the ending that we got was completely deserved, and all the storylines tied off with a nice bow. And it kind of got me a little emotional towards the end, because I was like, oh, these characters have been through so much, and they're finally getting to just take a breath and rest. And I think it was just overall a good experience. But because I've talked about these books in pretty much every single one of my wrap-ups, I'm not going to go into detail about it because I feel like that's a little bit redundant, so we're going to move on. Now this next one is Leave Me Behind by K.M. Moranova. And I know I just said that dark romance wasn't gonna be that 5-star feeling, and I still stand by that because I rated this one 4 stars, but this is the first time that I've actually rated a book and then, upon further reflection, have decided to rate it higher than what I did in the moment, which is so weird for me because most of the time I rate something super high and then I come back later, I'm like, you know what, that's probably about a star less. But this, I rated it 4 stars in the moment, but I feel like this is at least a 4.25, 4.5 star. And this is a standalone in the Dark Forces universe. This is a dark military romance, okay? I picked this up just because I'd seen a little bit around and I felt like a dark military romance, like that setting, was super intriguing to me. And so I picked this up just kind of like, you know what, I need a break from fantasy, and I was piggybacking off the Syndicater because I was in the mood, and I'm a chronic mood reader. And I picked this up and oh my god, this was so good, guys. I was completely blown away. I think these characters in a book that I'm going to talk about in a second are morally black more so than these, but I would venture to say some of these characters are definitely morally black. And I've never read anything like that before, and I think it was really entertaining because when you have somebody that is so out of touch with reality, it makes for really interesting decisions that they make. And like I said about the Book of Azrael, like the plot is better when people are crazy, and some of these characters are crazy. And I really liked this because it's about this girl who is being transferred to another unit because her entire unit died on a mission, and so she's going to this other unit called Malum, or Malum, I think it's Malum. And this new squad just like doesn't like her, doesn't respect her, which a woman in a military, they're not gonna get respect, unfortunately. So that was kind of like a given, but this was like another level. And so they're basically trying to convince her to quit the squad, but in the Dark Forces, you can't quit because the Dark Forces are a secret branch of the military made up of people who have committed the most heinous of crimes, and instead of being sent to jail or executed, they're recruited for this military so they do the dirty jobs that the regular military won't do because it's messy, it'll look bad on the government, right? And so a lot of this book is her kind of training in this new squad, but the timeline for this, a lot of the book happens like on the mission within a couple hours, and that, it sounds like that would be slow paced, but it's not. This was non-stop, fast paced, interesting stuff. There's a lot of secrets within this military, and there's a lot of corruption, and obviously this is a romance, so they fall in love, but it's a very messy road to get there. And after finishing this one and finding out that this author has a duology set in the same universe, I was done for. So let's talk about that one next. The next 2 books that I read is Your Knife, My Heart, and My Blade, Your Back by K.M. Moranova. This is the duology set in the Dark Forces universe with different characters. There is a little bit of overlap because it is in the Dark Forces, so you have the same main leadership, but this male main character specifically, oh my god, was the most morally black character I have ever seen. And there's a reason for it, because obviously he's got some trauma in his past, he's a little messed up, a little crazy, but there's an added element of this basically like a super soldier serum, but it shuts off your pain receptors, and he's been kind of the guinea pig for this drug, and it kind of makes him go crazy. So the premise of the book is he needs a new partner, but he's killed the last 3 that he's been assigned to. And so this girl is recruited to the dark forces because of some crazy thing that she did, which I won't spoil what she did, but she gets recruited and told, hey, if you survive the next 24 hours with this guy, then you're gonna be you're gonna be his partner because he's killed the last 3. She's like, oh, lovely. And so they kind of get to bonding just a little bit, and he kind of had this connection with her that's a little bit unexplainable. I don't remember. What's the word? You know what I'm trying to say. And it's kind of set up a little bit of the same as the Leave Me Behind book. There's definitely a lot of training because she is actually new to the Dark Forces. In Leave Me Behind, the female main character had already been in the Dark Forces for a little while, so she's gone through the training. So this one kind of has, I don't want to say trials, it's more of like a think Divergent. When Triss goes to Dauntless, she has to go through this training thing to actually be in Dauntless. It's that kind of situation. But something happens at the end of her training that this book is also under 300 pages, super easy to digest. That's, I think, part of the reason why I read 10 books this month is because these were pretty short. But something happens crazy at the end of this book, crazy cliffhanger, and I was like, I literally have no choice but to go into My Blade, Your Back. And that was more where the romance kind of sets in, because in the first book, they're kind of in denial, and there's only so much you can do in under 300 pages of a romance book. And I think I enjoyed the second book more than the first. The first book I rated 4 stars, and in the moment I rated My Blade, Your Back 5 stars. I think it's probably a 4.5 now looking back on it. So that's another example of something that I get so entrenched in the emotion and the shock of like plot twists and crazy stuff that in the moment I'm just like, 5 stars, this is incredible. Which I guess, honestly, I should stop changing my ratings, because if I actually felt that in the moment, I need to be true to my feelings. But anyways, there's a little bit of a connection with this duology and Leave Me Behind. This duology is set before Leave Me Behind happens, and there's a crazy reveal at the end of it, which I was guessing that was going to be the case, but it kind of connects everything in this Dark Forces universe. And there's another one coming out. I don't remember when it's coming. I think it's spring or summer, called Bulletproof, and it's another story set in the Dark Forces, and I will be devouring it as soon as it comes out. Now this next book is Dragon Cursed by Elise Kova. I actually picked this up in my bookshelf reorganization video, and I started reading it in my next vlog, which is Google picks how many pages I read in a week. So if you want to go see me have reactions to it, definitely go watch that video. But this one, unfortunately, was a DNF. And I don't know if it was just because I was coming off from such a high from My Blade, Your Back, or if it was like too soon to switch back to fantasy, if that makes any sense, because I've been reading a couple different dark romances. This one I had such high hopes for because I love Elise Kova. I met her at Romantasy BookCon, which I also have a vlog for that, and she was the sweetest. And I had read Arcana Academy by her. I've not read A Duel with the Elf King quite yet. I do want to read that, and this is one of the few instances where I've read something else by the author and I've not enjoyed this one. And I think part of the reason was because this is an upper YA book, and I've said this so many times before, and I will keep saying it, upper YA or YA in general is incredibly hit or miss for me, and this unfortunately was a miss. I was not in the mood for trials, and I got probably 50 or 60 pages in, and the pace was a little weird, and I think it was moving too fast for me, and it was like a lot of information all at once, and then all of a sudden, okay, now you're thrown into these trials, and I'm like, oh my god, what the heck is happening? And it gave me a little bit of whiplash. I don't think I could accurately kind of explain what this book is about, but I'm gonna try. It's basically about this girl who is dragon cursed, and what that means is if you are dragon cursed, then over time you slowly turn into a dragon, and that is a no bueno thing because dragons are vicious and mean and violent creatures and have caused so much havoc in this society. And these trials are basically designed to find people who are dragon cursed and take them out before they can become dragons. And that premise sounds super interesting to me, but there was a couple different elements where it just was a little confusing, and I thought that was a little weird for a YA book, because a lot of times in YA books, when I don't get along with YA books, it's because it feels like somebody's holding my hand. But this was a weird instance where I felt like it was just like, here's this information, I expect you to understand it, and we're gonna move on. But I don't know. I'm going back and forth because I feel like I didn't give it a fair chance, but I still DNF'd because I just wasn't in the mood for it. So we'll see if I ever come back to this. I say that and I've never actually come back to a book I've DNF'd, but this might be one of them. I don't know. No hate for it. I just don't think it was for me. This next series I had such high hopes for. This is A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly by Sophia St. Germain, which is part of the Compelling Fate saga. And the second book is A Promise So Bold and Broken, and the third is A Bond So Fierce and Fragile, and the fourth one is A Fate So Dark and Delicate. I had taken this recommendation from Emmy Rossum, and I trust her recommendations with my life. I don't think she's ever let me down. And this wasn't a letdown per se. I just think it was another situation where I went into it with super high expectations and was a little disappointed. And this one I rated 3 stars. This one I also rated 3 stars. And I soft DNF'd the third book just because I wasn't caring. And I feel like it was a little bit unoriginal. And I'm not gonna go too much into detail with that because that was just mainly a feeling. I felt like I was kind of predicting a lot of things and I just didn't really connect to the characters. Like, they weren't annoying, but I just found myself like, I just didn't care. I don't know. Again, like I said with Dragon Curse, I don't know if it was just because I tried to come back to fantasy too quickly and if I needed to like kind of branch out even more and read some other books. But I mean, I got through this one and I was really enjoying it. And this one also, the chapters are super short. They're like 2 or 3, 4 pages each. So it was really easy to turn the page. And I think with A Promise So Bold and Broken, which is the second one, I was expecting more to happen because this book was a little bit slower. There was a lot of time jumps, but this basically is about a girl who is blood sworn to this Fae king, and the king calls in their bargain and tells her, I need you to infiltrate these elections in the human lands and run for regent so you can feed me information about what's happening over there, and if there's anybody that's trying to start a rebellion or start an open war with me because I've detected some things going on and I just want more information. He is not a good person, by the way. I don't know why I said that so gently, but he's terrible. And so she's like, oh, I really hate this because I'm half Fae and nobody likes that around here. And so she infiltrates these elections and they go through trials, which I think I'm so bored with trials because they're so predictable to me. And like, if you have trials in the first book and I know that there's 3 more books, obviously everything works out to some extent. It kind of removes the stakes for me because it presents like a super high stakes where if she quits, like, and she breaks this bargain with the king and she is out of the running for regent, she'll literally die because she's blood sworn, bound by magic to do what the king says. But I don't know. I also think she was a little bit annoying and she kind of had that like eldest daughter syndrome of like, everything is my fault, everything is my responsibility, so whatever happens in my family is my fault, and she blames herself for so many things. I'm like, girl, like, chill. Literally, it wasn't your fault. And something tragic happens with her family and she moves away, which is kind of how she came into this bargain with the king. She did something terrible and then is sent to the dungeons, and he's like, well, I'll let you live if you make this bargain with me, but you have to go live in a faraway land. And she's like, it's fine, I'll take it, I'm being tortured. Which, valid, but whatever. I guess I just don't have that many comments. This is kind of the first time I've continued a mediocre series. And I hate saying that because like it's not terrible, like it's fine, but I think I was just craving something incredible, and this, to me, it just wasn't incredible. So we'll see if I end up finishing the third book. I am this far into it. So I'm on page 156 and I put it down because I was like, I put it down and I went back to dark romance. So let's talk about that. Now these last two books are Insatiable and Voracious by Lee Rivers, which is part of the Edge of Darkness trilogy. This is a super, super, super dark romance. And I'd taken this recommendation from my friend Sierra. I'll put her tags and stuff here on screen. You will know her from Unhinged Book Talk. And if you have seen the Mass Verse wall with like the red strings, the investigation wall, that's her. So I had taken this recommendation from her and I felt like it was the appropriate time to go back into dark romance because I still wasn't vibing with the fantasy that I was reading. And again, I can't tell if it was just because I went back too soon or if it really was just bad books. I don't know. And so I started this one and I rated Insatiable 3 stars and I rated Voracious 3.25 stars. I had a good time. It was set up in a very interesting way to where this was set in like obviously like present day, and there was a lot of flashbacks to what happened between these two characters in their relationship beforehand, and you're slowly fed a little bit of detail to make sense of why they're kind of clashing in present day. So it's about this girl named Stacy Rhodes, and she is in this very abusive situation with her stepbrother. And definitely check the trigger warnings on this one because there were a couple things that were pretty tough to read. I got through it. I generally like, I'll look at trigger warnings, but like I've never run into anything that's made me put a book down or like made me feel like, okay, I can't do this. But I could definitely see this book being very difficult for some people. But anyways, you're following Stacy and her situation, and then you're also following Cade Mitchell, who is the male main character, and he is the son of this psychopath basically, who is in this facility, and basically he's battling with his own, like Cade is battling with his own psychopathic tendencies and relating to his father. And a lot of the book is just them exploring their relationship. And it's one of those books where it's very spicy as well. It starts out with like a very low-key plot, and as you get through the book, the plot kind of ramps up. And definitely by the end of the second book, the plot is like, okay, there's a lot happening right now. The characters have to do something about it, basically. In the first book, it was kind of just them butting heads. I didn't get this, oh my god, this is a phenomenal series feeling, and I'm kind of waiting for that because I have seen so many people sobbing about these books on the internet, and I can kind of see where it's coming from, but I feel like I am coming from a stance of there's a lot of really heavy topics in it, and I just kind of feel like not numb, but I'm not having these bawling moments because there's just like, oh my god, I cannot believe you're going through this kind of moment, and kind of just this overall sadness for these characters. But I love Cade Mitchell. I think, oh my god, he's been through so much, and he is not the most amazing of people, obviously. It's dark romance. He's not going to be a golden retriever, but he's been through so many things, and he's made so many decisions because of that, and is really, really struggling with it. And he is basically being forced to do certain things by this politician, and she's blackmailing him into doing all of this stuff. And it's not a mafia situation, but there's definitely like an underworld kind of situation. So I'm excited to keep going. I am currently reading, oh my god, I'm currently reading Tortured Souls by Melissa K. Rorick, and that is the first book in the Avonlea series, which is set in the Lady of Darkness universe, the world, and it is set with these characters that you meet in Lady of Darkness. This is a prequel, and I'm really enjoying it so far. I was gonna go into the third Edge of Darkness book, but Tortured Souls hit my Kindle, so I was like, I have to take a break, and I am really enjoying it. So I'm thinking in this moment, I did a good thing by reading dark romance because it is so vastly different from what I'm reading in that fantasy book. So hopefully next month I will get to the last Edge of Darkness book, and I cannot wait to talk about the next books for next month because I have a stacked TBR. But anyways, that is all that I have for you today, my friends. Thank you so much for watching. I know this was a little bit longer of a wrap up, but I had so much fun. This is honestly my favorite videos to make, is just to sit here and yap to you about all the books that I read. read. I hope you picked up some recommendations, some to add to your TBR, and if you've read any of these, let me know what you think. And if you have any suggestions based on my opinions of these books, definitely let me know because I'm always adding books to my TBR. But I will see you next time, my friends.